Hey everyone, this is Joe Pantozzi with Make Your Wealth Work, and really pleased and somewhat relieved to be introducing you to Jason K. Powers, who's my co-host on our podcast. And this is absolutely a form of rebooting of Make Your Wealth Work. And Jason is going to be doing at least half, if not more than half, of the heavy lifting with me when we tackle the subjects that pretty much everybody needs to tackle at some point in their lives. So I'm glad you're here, Jason. Thanks for being here.
Oh yeah, I'm excited about this new chapter for Make Your Wealth Work. I think it's going to be exciting. There's a ton of fun things coming down the line, and yeah, I'm pumped. I'm pumped up for
I'm
it.
glad. One of the reasons why I need Jason in my life is because he has this beautiful, positive attitude. It's a fresh attitude. Now, I am an optimist for 99% of life, but because I've been doing financial advising, coaching, mentoring, however you want to describe it, for so long, I get my heart broken a lot. And it's not because of the clients that I have. I get my heart broken when I talk to people and they wind up not taking action. They wind up not going anywhere. I don't care if they wind up hiring somebody else and working with somebody else. What I care about is people not being prepared at all, not taking ownership of financial literacy, not teaching their kids, God forbid, not having insurance of some kind or preparation when there's a loss. And so the burden of that sometimes becomes heavy. And I have to realize not everybody's going to take action. And some people are just going to get sick or die or graduate or get disabled. And they're just not going to have what's in place, what should be in place. They're going to die without a will, all the stuff. And Jason has, I think, kind of a philosophical attitude that is refreshing for me, that reminds me, hey, Joe, there's a quarter, there's 300 million people in the US and we can't help them all. So we can help the people we can help. And fortunately, we're not the only podcasters on the planet that are talking about financial diligence and literacy and thriving. There are many, many people who are good, and there are many, many people who are just telling an ordinary story, which is good. And I believe that the airwaves, if you will, are more saturated than they were 50 years ago with people talking about wealth and money and stewardship and the right things and inheritance. A lot more people talking about it. I don't know necessarily that the percentage of people becoming more responsible is increasing. I just know that we want to be available for the people who do want to take action, who do want to learn. And I'll just say this before I shut up and let Jason talk for a minute, is we don't want to have these prepackaged solutions and have people pick up on them and just take them on and assume that they're fine. We take, I believe, a little bit more difficult approach for us, which is taking an interest in transmitting financial intelligence, financial literacy, financial research, the data, the history, the economics to people, and people have to take responsibility for owning that information and then applying it in their lives and executing it in their lives and their business and their inheritance, their heirs, their posterity. So it's not just saying we're financial planners, we know how this works, don't try this at home, and then having people just follow us blindly. We take a longer path, which is helping people obtain, receive, and process the education so that it makes sense for them.
That's right. Well, I think we have a propensity, right, as humans to we're constantly trying to take in information. And well, especially today in the social media world, right? We have this, what is we just joke about whatever it is, 38 characters or less, and I can retain that information, right? But if it's anything more than that, then it's too much. But so we have this constant feeding of information, which probably started, more or less when we got into heavy advertising in our culture, right? And this constant feeding of information, and so we think we're learning. I think a lot of us we're constantly intaking information. We think we're learning, and it may become head knowledge, but we're not applying it, as you're saying, right? We're just taking it in, but we don't actually apply it. So we know a lot, but we're not doing. The doing is what we're, you know, it's like my mom used to say, you got to put feet on your prayers.
Mm,
You know,
mm.
we can, hey, change my life. But if you don't ever actually leave the house, what how's it going to change? You
Putting
know,
feet on my prayers.
and I
That's
think
so
it's
good.
that way. Yeah, yeah. So I think that's our goal, right? Is to just we want to keep teaching people. We want you guys the listeners to learn, and then we want you to apply it
Yeah.
and apply it and go, okay, yeah, that's me. If you're like, this is me, man, you're totally describing my life right now,
Yeah.
and apply it, or call us and we'll help you apply
Yeah.
it,
Yeah. For sure.
and get feed on your prayers, so to
Hmm.
speak.
I hear a lot of people, I sense a lot of people responding to information by saying, okay, I get that. I understand what you're saying. I know where you're going. Tell me what to do. How does
Yep.
this work? Give me the the 50,000 foot synopsis. Finance for dummies. Well, man, if you've been working any length of time, I don't care if it's 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, you've had millions of dollars come through your hands.
Yeah.
And for most people, they're allowing it to slip through their fingers as quickly as it comes into their possession. As soon as we spend a week, a month, a quarter, a year working hard for that money, we're letting it slip through because we're assuming that all these creditors and financial institutions and collectors um, cannot cannot be changed. The formula cannot be changed. The proportion of money going out of the house cannot be changed. And for many people, it's 100%. They're taking in X and they're sending out all of it. They're sending out
Right.
100%, or in many cases more than 100% because they're in debt. So
Mhm. Wasn't it Nelson Nash that said, even like he said, it's not about how much you earn, right? But what's the second? How
how
much you
much you keep?
keep?
Yeah,
What you
yeah.
keep. And I think that's it, right? We can earn all day long, but how much of it are we keeping or building or
There you
growing?
go. Now, even though we're going to talk about some some elements that cause unintended consequences, and I'll
Mhm.
refer to a book by Len Rainier. And the book is called Unintended Consequences. We're going to refer to that, but that also has an element of how. It has an element of process, and we'll talk about some of those steps. But at the very fundamental level, there are some people I know who have just taken the bull by the horns, and for them, they say, it's kind of common sense. If I make $100,000 and I save $30,000, then everybody else can have the rest. I just got to make sure that I can take care of my family first. And I think that balance has been lost. I think that the priority has been lost because our culture is so busy. We're such a rich nation. We're having to make sure that if our next door neighbor got a new car or a newer car, that we're going to take a second look at our car and say, you know what, it's time. Harry next door got a new car. Uh, don't I deserve a new car? And then the cycle continues. and we apply that in every aspect of our lives. And pretty soon, we're forgetting that we want to have some money set aside in a hopefully a very large basket for future things, for future investments, for retirement, for the kids' college, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So in many ways, I tell our associates, I think I want to change the title on my card to CRO, Chief Reminding Officer, because many of the things that we speak about with our clients has to do with reminding them of the things that they often already know. Everybody knows in their gut that you should save first. You should put yourself first, and then let everybody else, the collectors, the lenders, the finance companies, the automobile companies, they can all get paid second. And so, human nature being what it is, people will make all these excuses and say, "Well, I can't see daylight. I don't have any money left at the end of my month. I only have month left at the end of my money." And so it's reminding that it's not rocket science, but it takes habit, it takes routine, it takes diligence, it takes discipline. And by the way, I hate all those things. I mean, I hate discipline. I hate the word economics because as soon as I say the word economics, I think half the people's eyes glaze. Oh, economics. What in the world has that got
Right.
to do with me? Well,
Yeah, that's
it
right.
has to do with your managing the resources that come into your house or your business, right? It's always ultimately your house, the resources that come into your house, and how to allocate them to all the things that you've already decided in advance that you want to spend the money on. That's economics, right? It's the production, the conservation, the distribution of limited resources. And we could use fancy language, but I'm not a fancy language guy. Let me remind you of the things that you said you wanted to do 20 years ago.
Well, and even spinning off of that, I think that's a good, segue to our conversation today. And in we have this idea of what our money's doing, but how often is it really, like we just talked about Nelson Nash saying, it's not about how much you earn, but how much you keep. And there are so many ways that money is just constantly coming in and then leaving the household, right? And it's a one-way street. Now, some of it, like you're right, what choices do you have? Groceries and standard bills. But a lot of it is, well, within our control, but we just don't realize it. You know, often, I think more often than not, as you and I explain this to people, it's, you don't know what you don't know,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's helping people. I didn't know about this. I mean, 10 years ago, I was just hearing about it. And it was like this light bulb went off and I was like, what in the world? What am I doing? And I was like, oh, okay. I get it. Let me, and but it's a process, right? So learning and growing and applying it and trying to turn that around. So so I think let's dive into a few examples, Joe. Maybe, the first thing that comes to mind, which is a big one for people, and there's a lot of different opinions, are taxes. Like if we tackle taxes for a second. You mentioned years ago, and it never occurred to me until you said it, about getting a tax refund. And I was like, I think when you first mentioned it, tax refund, right? Now, as I say, the listeners right now, what's the first thing you think of? You think of, oh, sweet, I get some extra money this time of year. And we go, okay, great. And that's the way I always saw it until Joe, you said something along the lines of, right, they're giving you back money that was yours to begin with. So you overpaid, you gave them money to hold on to for you throughout the year, and now they're giving it back. And could you have better utilized it yourself instead of giving it to them to hold for the year?
Oh my goodness.
And this light bulb went off, and I was like, what? I never thought about it that way.
So typically that refund comes in the spring, right? If you file your taxes by April 15th or thereabouts, you're going to get the refund
Mhm.
at some point, within a few weeks or so. And isn't that great? My refund is going to come along right in time for me to spend it on summer vacation.
Yeah,
Great.
that's right.
So like Jason said, what you just did was you gave an interest-free loan to the government. Now, the same people that love tax refunds often are the same people that say, okay, hey, this financial deal or this financial vehicle or this financial tool you're talking about, what's the rate of return? Well, why is rate of return important to you if you don't mind lending money out at zero? So if you were a banker and we're encouraging our clients to learn how to think like bankers, think like business owners, think like entrepreneurs, think like owners. If you're any one of those, you never want to put money to work at zero. If that's going to happen, well then keep it home, right? So why wouldn't I keep that money in my own bank? At the very least, you lent it out at zero. Why wouldn't I want it sitting accessible in my own account at the same rate, at zero? But at least I have access to it. What you did was when you sent the money out to the government and prepaid your taxes or you had withholding taken, and some people do this intentionally. I have extra money withheld so that I can have a savings at the end of the year. And then I'll use that savings to pay off a car loan that's close to being paid off, to pay the kids' tuition, to use it for a getaway, to use it for vacation. Well, why wouldn't you want that money earning at least a few points of interest when you're so concerned about rate when it comes to other things? You want your savings account to earn you something. You'd like your retirement or your investment account of some kind to earn you something, but you don't mind lending money to the government. And no offense, well, yeah, it's offensive. I want to be offensive. The government's the last thing on the planet that I want to send money to. Look what they're doing with the money that they take from us to begin with, and we won't go down that road because that'll be a 6-hour conversation for starters. So taxes, think about what you're having withheld, look at what you've had withheld and refunded back over the last several years, and determine whether you can lower that number. Use that money more efficiently, because very often the same people who are getting a tax refund are the same people who are paying interest costs on car loans and credit cards. You're paying interest, excessive interest, sometimes toxic interest on loans that if you had that refund money in your check on a regular basis, you could pay off those debts sooner and save yourself interest. So if you saved yourself interest on a credit card, that's the same as earning interest, right? Was it Ben Franklin who said a penny saved is a penny earned? So,
Mhm.
gee, when credit cards, and we'll get into that later, when credit card rates are 29%, if you have a bill of $10,000 that you owe to the credit card company, 29% means you're paying the credit card company $2,900 this year. That's serious, real money. So you got to put these things together. I want to have money saved up in taxes so I can get the money back and spend it on something. Well, spend it on what? Well, pay off my credit card. Well, you wouldn't have that credit card debt if you had gotten the money periodically and spent
Right.
as you earned. Another thing on
Right.
taxes is making sure that you do understand what tax bracket you're in. And this again goes is connected to retirement plans. A lot of young people will say, hey, I want to put money into an IRA or into my 401k. Aside from the match, separate discussion, I get a tax deduction. And I say, oh, you get a tax deduction. Great. That relates to taxes. What tax bracket are you in? Well, I don't know. Well, let's take a look. You made $14 an hour or whatever you made. Shouldn't you know what tax bracket you're in order to decide whether you should put your money in a tax deductible program to see if it's going to be of any value to you? So Please don't look at taxes as something that comes out of my check, something I have to pay, something I have to pay quarterly, and there's nothing I can do about it. I mean, you're in control of your own economy when within your own home, and no one's going to look after that money more diligently than you should. So that helps.
Right. Well, and like you mentioned, I mean, one of the thought processes that people have is I'm gonna try to avert taxes a little bit, and so I'm gonna pump more into a tax deferred qualified plan, for example, right? Matched or unmatched, right? Without getting into that, but a qualified plan, and then again, not knowing your tax bracket, not knowing, is this advantageous for me? Is this even in? Do I even have other options? So many people, we've talked about it, don't know what they don't know. I didn't know early on, right? When you have options to put money in a qualified retirement plan, I was like, well, that's the only way I can ever build for retirement because that's what we do. you know, I went and got a job here, and they're saying, hey, you can put money into this retirement plan, and yeah, whatever it is, right? 401k or IRA or 403b or SEP, or you know, and not knowing that you actually do have other options if you want them. Right?
Sure. And why would you want to consider other options? Well, here's a couple of reasons. Um, do you know how much you'll be earning going forward in that account? Of course, you can't know, right? So there's no certainty that you'll have a specific amount of money in the future. There's no certainty that you'll have a particular income coming out of that account in the future. There's no certainty that inflation won't decimate the money that's in that account. There's no certainty that inflation won't be greater than the rate that you're earning. There's no certainty that your tax bracket in the future will be higher or lower than it is today. Now, what's my opinion? What's my suspicion? What's my fear? The the government is spending our money like there's no tomorrow, and they continue to increase the rate at which they take our money, and they're spending money that they don't have. Great discussion on the money supply and the economy and the fraud that the Fed is perpetrating on us. But for all those reasons, the government is going to need more money in the future. Now, if somebody says to you, you'll probably be in a lower tax bracket in the future, they're probably selling tax deductible retirement plans, and that's one of the carrots they're going to stick in front of your face to get you to put money into that thing. Because guess what? If I'm an advisor, a money manager, I'm going to get paid a fee based on how much money's in the account. If you're putting the money in the account pre-tax, that means I get to manage your money and the government's money, which means I get a higher fee. So at the very least, there's an ulterior motive there. Maybe I'm going to make more money by just suggesting you put money in a 401k or other deductible plan so I can get more money to manage. What will it be worth in the future? No one knows. Why would I invest in any program whatsoever where I had that many question marks?
Yeah, it becomes a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people, and I think it goes back to everybody kind of starts to, once you understand your options, you start to fall into one, we'll say, school of thought or another, right? One philosophy or another. And that's what happened with me was I was my past career, there was absolutely no way I was ever going to retire, or comfortably at least. And I was like, oh, there's no way, man. I can stick all this money in a qualified account and you know and hope it grows. I was just, it was risky for me. And I had seen firsthand family members just get wiped out, through 9/11, through 2008, things like this. And then I was even more hesitant to put money into those types of accounts. And that's just my story, right? And how it unfolded. And then I found this thing, right? This vehicle called the infinite banking concept, this concept that where you can really redeploy that money, and that has become my school of thought. That's become my strategy for myself, and because I've just seen the negative effects personally on the other side. So some people like it, some people want to stick with it. It works for some people, but I think it's important, like you said, it's you don't have guarantees on that side. It's if this, that, and the other. If dot dot dot, right? Throw whatever in there. You need all these things to line up, right?
So let me just add one more a point at the risk of beating this thing to death. And I don't think you can possibly beat it to death in a very short period of time. But again, the same people who are interested in the benefits that they perceive in a 401k are also the same people who have toxic debt, credit card balances, and they're losing money hand over fist in the monthly outlay with all the expenses that they have to pay out because they don't have, we'll call it, sufficient income to live their life. So they're making a sacrifice to put money into a retirement plan, and the greed factor sets in because number one, I get a tax deduction. At what rate? I have no idea. And number two, I get a match. I get an employer match. Okay. How long will that employer match be there? Oh, well, I assume it'll be there for a long time. No, not necessarily. An employer can change the match. All they have to do is ask permission from the IRS to change their match. They can change the plan. They can terminate the plan. Your company can close. You can change jobs. And now you're left with a plan that you have to manage in some other form. Maybe it's rolling it over to a new employer. Maybe it's rolling it over to an IRA, but it's still an account that has handcuffs on it. You can't use it unless you pay all the tax that's due and a penalty. And so the benefit that you thought you were going to gain by putting the money in, well, I get the match and they get a tax deduction, is going to be wiped out if you need the money because of some emergency that maybe should have been foreseen, maybe should have been planned for, and maybe should have been accommodated by having money locally in an account that you have access and control over. So I'm sorry to say the greed factor does come into play when people say, I want the employer match, I want the tax deduction. Well, how are you doing with your monthly budget? Well, I got no debt, got no car loans, my house is paid off. Well, maybe that's a situation where 401k might be valuable to you. I don't know. It all depends on the individual circumstances, but I call it silo thinking, where people are looking at one element. They're looking at the attractiveness of that element, and they're not taking into consideration anything else in their life. For example, let me get these credit cards paid off first. Maybe that will actually put more dollars in my pocket presently and in the future than gaining that match that might benefit me, might not.
That's right. That's right. So give us one possible alternative to look at and I'm gonna pinch you on this one in 2 minutes or less. And then what's going to happen is we'll tell you guys how you can connect with us. We have no problem talking for hours on this subject, and so we'll go into part 2 on the next episode for you guys, and just continue this conversation, and then bring it back around, and what can we do about it? We've got all these issues and these problems, right, that we're discussing, and well, what are we going to do about it? And so stick with us in that next episode. But Joe, give us a short synopsis of what they have to look forward to on possibilities.
So there's a couple of buckets that you can put your money into, right? The main bucket that people have their money flow through is the taxable bucket. So your earnings, your paycheck goes through a taxable bucket. It's all fully taxable. The second bucket is tax deferred bucket that we just talked about, having all these chains and handcuffs on. You can put it in, you can maybe get a tax deduction, and you'll have all these restrictions and possibly penalties for accessing the money. The third bucket is the one that rich people know about, and that's the tax-free bucket. And there are only a certain limited amount of things you can put in there. So tax-free municipal bonds, who owns those? Rich people. Okay. If there is a muni bond that you could buy in the state in which you live, then you can get interest on that bond. That's tax free under certain circumstances. Got to have that caveat there. Number two, you could put money into a Roth IRA, a Roth IRA, or a Roth 401k. Again, it has certain limitations and certain restrictions. And the third thing, and this is the bucket that wealthy people love to put money into, right? Muni bonds, Roth. Roth doesn't apply that much to wealthy people because they want to put money in huge amounts. The third item you can put into that tax-free bucket is cash value, dividend paying whole life insurance. It's also called generically permanent insurance. So rich people, Fortune 500 companies, and banks own that asset in the billions, and they use it to subsidize and to finance, to capitalize the other assets that they're buying to create more income. So it's an asset that creates more income that helps finance other assets. So what we do is we help our clients understand how that works. Again, you wouldn't care about how it works unless it was important to you in the first place. Well, is it important for me to build up money? Yes. Save money? Yes. Protect money? Yes. Pass money down to our kids intelligently and efficiently? Yes. Take care of my family? Pay off all my debts? Leave an inheritance if I graduate, when I die? Yes. Well, we can show you how that works.
Great. So if you guys want to learn more and talk with either myself or Joe Pantozzi, head on over to alphaomegawealth.com/podcast. You can check out some of the other podcast episodes as well there. You can schedule an appointment with me or Joe, and we can help you unpack this a little bit further. But meanwhile, stick with us and check out the next episode, and we'll keep diving in.
See you then. Thanks.